All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Birthseed, our heritage, our legacy podcast dedicated to addressing the pressing issues of Black maternal health, exploring the stories, the challenges, and the triumphs of Black mothers in Delaware and beyond. On this podcast, we dive into our heritage, the systemic barriers we face, and the legacy we aim to leave behind. And we typically do so through heartfelt conversation right here on The Birthseed. Joining me for a conversation today, I have your name?
Dr. Keonna Watson.
Dr. Keonna Watson, yes. All right, and you?
I'm Christian Lovehall.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to get started. And before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that in honor of Pride Month, episode 4 of The Birthseed uplifts the lived experiences, needs, and resilience of Black LGBTQ plus birthing people, centering queer and trans voices within the birth and postpartum space. We explore what it means to reclaim our bodily autonomy, challenge systems in the healthcare, and building affirmative, inclusive spaces for all who give birth. All right. At the Birthseed, we believe that birth is a human right for everybody, every identity, and every family configuration. Mm-hmm. You guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
All right. And before we get into the conversation, how are you guys feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Happy Pride Month.
Yeah.
Happy Pride Month. Right. All right. Before I actually delve into like some of the topics that we're going to be talking about, I was just talking to a friend of mine before the podcast today that typically, if Pride Month is coming up, you hear it in the society, social media, community, people talking about it, in different shapes or form, facets. But this year has been significantly different. Like, I feel like voices are silenced and people are just not talking about it. Or even if they do, it's kind of like on a hush-hush level.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that if you think there's a reason behind it?
Yeah, I know firsthand that organizations have been getting threats. Organizations that typically celebrate pride loud and proud. Organizations have lost sponsorships. There's definitely a political component to it. They're trying to take away rights and in essence taking away funding for a lot of it. Delaware, we're still having our Pride event, but I know initially there were some talks of canceling lots of things because of the threats, but they are moving forward with some of it. But that's most of the reason why is the threats, and also the political piece where folks just feel like they can come out and say whatever they want, do whatever they want, because we have folks that are higher up now that don't care about us. So it's like folks are saying, why should we?
Okay. And Christian, did you have any input to that at all?
No, I definitely agree. I think that, a lot of people are being strategic when it comes to planning different Pride events and things like that. And I think that, in Philly, I know that it kind of has ignited a new excitement about the movement. Okay. So I think that this year it's going to be a lot more people, because people want to uplift their voices, they want to share their stories, and embrace, who they are out loud and proud. Okay. We also, Philly has this huge LGBT pride flag. Last year it was flown by hundreds of people. It's thousands of feet. So this year they're actually making it longer. Okay. So yes, Philly is going to be very, very queer this month.
Okay, well, yeah. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And we're going to get back to you later on, talk more about some of the movements that you've, participated in, and some of the, changes or influences that you've made in the society, especially in Philadelphia, given some scenarios or situation. But before we delve into that, I just want you guys to really introduce yourself, because I know I have like true prominent guests on this podcast today, and I don't think our listeners know who you are. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you stand for, and your pronouns.
Okay.
and just to make you guys aware, the goal for this podcast today, for me, and I hope for you as a listener, is to learn and be open-minded, and hopefully anything that is confusing that you've been hoping and wanting clarification on when it comes to the LGBTQ space, you're able to get that confirmation. If for any reason you're not, when you listen to this podcast, something comes to your mind and you need clarification on, please leave a comment down below. Especially him, he's associated with Black Mothers in Power.
Yes.
So he can answer some of your questions or concerns. And if you need further clarification, just reach out to us. But yeah, I'll have you introduce yourself so they can know who you are and what you stand for.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Keonna Watson. Pronouns are she, her. I am many things, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up, and it can be very long and drawn out, especially because I'm an educator and a storyteller, all the things.
Love it.
I am a prevention specialist. I have a doctorate in prevention and a master's in family science. So I practice. My practices are geared towards the family system. And I work with families in multiple aspects. I am a mental health provider and a holistic health practitioner. So a lot of my practice is guided by natural wellness. I am also an adjunct professor. So I teach general psychology and sociology. I'm an actor. And I am also an author. And by way and in honor of my ancestors, my lineage, and the Most High, I also am a warrior and a healer.
Awesome.
Ashe.
Love it. Thank
Yes.
you.
Welcome.
Yes.
All right.
So I am Christian Lovehall. I am many things as well. So I'm trying to, wrap this up. But I am an advocate. Been so since the age of 7, standing on the front lines for many marginalized communities, including LGBTQ plus, trans, women, sex workers, and many others. I am a self-published author, also a doula. I go by the name of Brother Doula, and I am an entrepreneur.
Awesome, Brother Doula.
Brother Doula.
I love it. Now, Brother Doula, is that your way of identifying yourself in that space?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, and I needed that clarification also simply because I know that, doulas, female doulas are called doulas, and then male are called doulo. And then I had asked him earlier, and I wanted to ask him again. Wanted to know if, people who cater to the LGBTQ specifically had a special name. So there's not a special name.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
It's you chose that.
Yes.
title.
Yes.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it.
Yes.
All right. So why do you think it's important for us to talk about LGBTQ? Why do you think it's important in general?
So statistically, all right, let me start with a personal experience. So I identify as lesbian. I am married. I have a wife. I also have a son. He's an adult, my adult child. Raised him, came out when he was 1, raised him, and all the things that I am. And he is heterosexual, cisgender male who is very open and welcoming and affirming and accepting of all people. Right?
That's beautiful.
And I think that it's important to talk about LGBTQ plus. From my personal experience, I knew as early as 7, right, that I was attracted to, at that time, girls, right? Where I'm an adult now, so I'll say women, but at that age, young girls, and who were my age, and I didn't understand what that meant. My grandparents raised me; they were married for 55 years, right? They were mom and dad. And that's all I knew. I was raised in a church and questioned every day, and said what was wrong with me. I had thoughts that I should be dead, right? Because why? And got to college and really learned what LGBTQ plus was. I didn't know before college, right? Before 18 and 19. And at that point of learning and walking and becoming who I am who I was and who I am now as a woman, I flourished. I remember experiencing what I didn't know then, but now I know as a therapist, symptoms of depression, suicidal ideation, literally not knowing what those things were because we didn't talk about it and got to college and learned all. So I think it's important to talk about it and educate folks so that they understand that we are who we are. We're going to, whether it's hidden from us or not talked about, we find ourselves. And it can be as easy as finding ourselves as early on as being educated at a very young age so that we can miss the suicidal thoughts or the suicidal attempts. Statistically, we turn, where there's not education or acceptance and there's rejection, there are higher rates of drug use and intimate partner violence. And so statistically, in being marginalized, we miss so many opportunities to live a healthy and well life where there is no education. And that's why it's important to talk about it, right? And also, if there are folks in your family who identify, to also help your children to understand who they are, so that they can grow up like my son and be open and welcoming and just like, it's okay, he can literally be in a space with anybody and it doesn't, it's joy that matters.
I love it that you made that comment about your son being heterosexual because I've had heated conversation. It's always heated every time we have to talk about this topic. Heated conversation about people believing that when you're gay and your partner is the same sex as you and you have a child, that it's almost inevitable that child will be gay because that's what they were taught growing up.
Isn't that something?
But it's crazy. Like, look at your story. Yeah. Like life stories and just the life experiences that we're talking about. Like, don't be so close-minded, right?
Yeah.
Be open-minded.
I always counteract that because you're right. That's what people come at you with. And I always say, well, my parents were man and woman. And I'm a lesbian, right? And I am loud and proud about it. Right? I saw that.
Right.
But I still came out to be who I am. And it's the same, right? Your child is going to be who they are, right? You can raise a heterosexual, homosexual, gender nonconforming. They're going to be who they are by way of themselves.
And one thing sorry.
No,
okay?
okay. I think my crystal said I'm tired.
Oh, that's okay. It's pretty though. I love it. But I think one thing I also want people to, for me, what I understand when it comes to the LGBTQ, I feel like, or my understanding is that I don't think it's something somebody chooses, right?
Right.
I have a conviction, and not just a conviction, but I don't think it's someone who just wake up and say they want to be gay, right? I think it's more than that. I think it's biological.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I say this is because a lot of lesbians or gay people that I've met, they tell me how it was such a struggle when they were growing up. Just some people are like, I'm gonna pray it out of me so that my family don't hate me. I'm gonna do they just have all these thoughts in their head, and then when that thought comes along, the suicide, because they're afraid. Like, if it's something somebody can just learn or choose, and society is gonna come at you, you're not just gonna wake up and do it. At least that's what I'm on, and I'm just hoping that people will be open to truly trying to understand people who are, who are in the LGBTQ, instead of judging and pointing fingers and things like that. Try to understand them, try to ask questions, try to get on their level. I'm just sick. It's 2025, y'all. Sick and tired of just the ignorance. And I think a lot of it has to do with education. And speaking of education, can you elaborate on the full definition of the LGBTQ? And then from there, we're going to talk about, the cis and the heterosexual, the difference and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just elaborate on definition.
Yeah, absolutely. So LGBTQ, the L stands for lesbian. G stands for gay. So, and if you, do you want me to bring, all right, I'll keep going.
I'll probably ask later, like, because information is feeding up of everything.
I'm telling you, I'm an educator. That could take the long run.
A lot of letters.
B stands for bisexual. T for trans, transgender, and Q can be queer or questioning and queer and questioning, right? And then we have plus. So we say the LGBTQIABCs because there's so many additional letters that follow. Right? We have I for intersex, A for asexual, P for pansexual. Right? There's so many letters and identities. But essentially, when we say LGBTQIA plus, we are including all of the, I call it the beautiful ball of black and brown and everything in between rainbow.
Yes.
Okay. And is there a difference between cis and heterosexual, and what was the difference?
So cis, which is cisgender, it just means that you identify as the sex you're registered and born as. I'm sorry, not your register. You're the sex that you were born as, right? So I'm a cisgender woman. I was born a female. I identify as female. I identify as woman. And then we have trans, and I'll leave that to Christian. If Christian wants to get into that. But,
I'm coming to you. I have a lot of questions for you.
But when you're asking about cis versus hetero, what we like to say is there is your gender identity and your sexual orientation are two different things, right? So a cisgender woman can be heterosexual, a cisgender woman can be a lesbian, a cisgender woman can be bisexual, so on and so forth.
Okay.
The cis is it is solely identifying your gender.
Okay.
Yeah, not your sexual orientation.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And the reason why I asked is because I was talking to you earlier about, the Chimamanda Adichie, she's recently made a comment on social media about cis and heterosexual. And prior to her making that comment, which she did talk about later, that she didn't even know the word cis. This is an educator. She's like a world-renowned writer.
Wow.
So she didn't know. So when she made that comment and everybody came at her, like, cause she said trans men are trans men, trans women are trans women. People wanted her to actually speak more on it and clarify what she was saying. So I myself wasn't too familiar with the word cis. So I went down the rabbit hole to do my research and try to understand. And I was like, I have a podcast coming up. Maybe they can clarify it for me and maybe clarify it for somebody else that doesn't understand. So, because I was like, what was the big deal? Like, if you're cis and you identify as such, and somebody says heterosexual, like, I don't know. I was trying to figure out why it was such a big deal. Like, when she says cis to cis, trans to trans, and a cis is a cis. Like, do you understand, like, why they would have come at her?
I don't know because I would need
context
to
of the
see.
story, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I would need to see like what I would need
How
to hear
she
how
said it.
she said it. Yep, and what the body language. I pay attention to all the things, right? I need to see how she said it, why she said it, what the context of the saying was. I don't know. Maybe Christian, is there? Do you have any?
No, I haven't heard about this.
Yeah.
I would need to see a clip and then.
That's right. Okay. No problem. Thank you so much for just saying that. But like I said, I went down the rabbit hole and I listened to another, I think, a transgender woman speaking on it. And she was like, she should have maybe said, like, come to clarify the fact that I think what they were coming at her was a trans should not be that. The identity that they identify themselves with should not be taken away from them. Like, if I'm a trans male, then I'm a male.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? But the way she said it, she's saying that you're a trans male, you're
So
still,
is she?
you know what I'm saying?
So she was saying that you should always say I'm a trans man or I'm a trans woman versus I'm a man or a woman.
Yeah, what you are, what you are, like that's how people do.
Understand.
You had different people on the internet, like just breaking down what she said and all that stuff. But for me, I just wanted to understand what the big deal. But anyway, I digress. I digress. So let's go into the birth space, right? So you're the brother doula.
Yes.
And I know you've written a book. And if you just want to tell us a little bit about it, I've read the book, a really good book. And
Thank you.
when I read the book, and my feedback to you was that I love how affirmative it was, right? So, because I think the message there could be read by anybody, and I don't think you need to be in the LGBTQ space or heterosexual. I just think it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? But and then we're going to talk about the silencing of people's voices when it comes to writing books and how certain books are condemned and things like that. But just tell us a little bit, like, why did you write the book? Like, how did that come about? And tell us the name of the book, too, if you want to start with that.
So I wrote a children's book called My Name is Troy. And it came about, I would say, several years ago on social media. I remember seeing a lot of trans youth coming out and being loved and accepted by their parents. And so one particular case, I saw a young Black trans boy, his Black mother. And it was just like, it was very, just a very affirming thing to see. One of the things that, we in the Black community, we would talk about, like, this is something that white kids, experience, but not so much in the Black community. So when I saw that and heard their story, it was very powerful to me. And it caused me to reflect on my childhood and my transition in my life. And unfortunately, I didn't have the support that I saw this young Black trans boy receive from his parents. But it was just kind of me reimagining what would it look like for me as a child to be supported and affirmed and loved by my family. And it also made me reflect about, what tools and resources are out there for young Black trans boys or just young Black trans youth in general. A lot of the books that I saw a lot of queer and trans books, but the characters were white. So I wanted to create something specifically for young Black trans boys, young Black trans youth, something that they could read and see representation, and just, be seen and know that, their stories are out there, and just kind of put something together that they can relate to and be encouraged by.
Very good. All right, so if you don't mind, I'm going to read 2 pages from the book. So I ordered this book hoping I would get it in the mail prior to shooting this podcast, y'all. But even if I paid for the expedited, it still wasn't going to get here on time. So I messaged him. I was like, I need to read this book. I need to see what's up. So he emailed me the digital copy, and so I was really happy to see that. And I read it, and I just wanted to remember I said one thing I like about the book was how affirmative it sounded, like just so reassuring, so reaffirming. It's okay to be you.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like we were talking earlier, like when kids are growing up trying to identify with the right gender, they struggle, they fight with themselves, like, you know what I'm saying? This is what I like, but this is not what society want me to like, or this is not what they claim I'm supposed to like. Like they question themselves so much. I think that's the genesis, right? And this book talks, I don't know what page this is, because this is not, the digital copy is not by the number. I would have told you guys what page it was, but it says, it's okay that I like the color blue. I like to play in the rain and hop like a kangaroo. It's okay that I like to play sports. I don't like skirts, but I love my red striped shorts, right? It just talks about it's okay to be you. If you like blue, it's okay to be blue. I don't think it's fair that I would say I like blue and somebody comes up to me and say, no, you should like orange. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for when you think about being sanctimonial, when you view other people, I just want you to question yourself also that if I like something and somebody comes from the outside and wants me to like the other thing, how will that make you feel? Mm-hmm. Words are powerful. Words can be used to make one happy. Words can be used to make one sad.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the word you have to use or need to use on someone might be necessarily considered the truth, but even in that case, be mindful and also be sure to always provide additional context in what you're saying. That way you would, be at a space where your word is not coming as a bullet or triggering. Because again, words are powerful. Words can be dangerous. The same way words can be reaffirming and show love and do all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
That is the love.
Yeah.
You've had several movements, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit why, I know you're going to talk, why you decided to form the organization you have. Where
Transmarch?
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I was thinking about that. The Transmarch. Tell us a little bit about that, why you got into it, the success rate, and how it's been helpful to the society or the community.
Yes. So, as I said previously, I've always been an advocate. I just think it was part of growing up in Philly. Philly, you think about Philly.
City of brotherly love, yeah.
Philly is the city of many movements. It was the first capital of the U.S. And so just having that backdrop, I was born literally 12 days before the MOVE bombing, if anybody knows about that. So I just think that being an advocate and being a warrior for my people has just always been ingrained in me since birth. And so throughout the years, I would always attend many different rallies and demonstrations in support of many marginalized communities. People with disabilities, undocumented folks, LGBT folks. In Philly, we had a Dyke March that occurred every year that I would attend, and it was just part of me, being a brother, in my community. So unfortunately, in 2010, a Black trans woman by the name of Stacey Blahnik was murdered in South Philly, and I'm from South Philly, so. It affected me in many different ways and many different reasons, but I happened to attend her funeral in support of a friend of mine at the time, and it was my first trans funeral I attended, and it just caused me to feel many mixed emotions, but I know that when I left, I felt like something needed to be done. Like, we couldn't just stop at this funeral. And there were many, like I said, there were many movements in the city, but I didn't see anything for trans people. And so, I said I wanted to create a trans march to demand justice for Stacey Blahnik and her family, and to also kind of create a platform where Black and brown trans people can, share their experiences, make demands from the city, and just use their voices to advocate for themselves. So I was able to gather a committee the first year to help organize it. We had it in Love Park. It was symbolic for me to have it, in Love Park to kind of, center that theme of love. And we had about 350 people the first year, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And it just kept growing from there. The last march I organized was in 2019. It still occurs today. I don't know what's going on with it now.
You started something.
Yeah.
You started something.
But I definitely, was honored, and I felt like I was in the right place at the right time to be able to birth that movement.
Yeah, yeah, it's a legacy. You know what I'm saying, that you be remembered by, and you also be proud of, to look at, to say, I saw something and I did something. You know what I'm saying? You don't just see something and do nothing. Just like when you go to the airport, they say, what is that saying at the airport? you see that, right? Yeah, so you see, if you're moved by what the different, aspects of life, or things that, that you want to see change, it's important that you get up, speak up, do something about it. So I commend you for doing that.
Thank you.
And then after that, how did you get into the doula, the birth space, to become that? Tell us a little bit about that. And I loved your story, because you said you actually didn't pay for the class yourself.
Yeah.
you had like so tell us, give us the tea. Hopefully somebody might get lucky out there, or maybe do some research through you, or believe that there are organizations there, or there are people out there who, No, are
definitely
concerned about this and want to help to do something about it. So just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So there was a friend of mine who got pregnant. He was a trans man, black trans man, and he just kind of went on his own campaign and shared his experiences in the hospital as a birthing black trans man. And the things that I heard, to me, were horrifying. People, nurses, doctors walking by his room, making jokes, whispering, some nurses barely wanting to touch him, and just not taking him seriously, not responding, to his expressions of pain and things like that. So that was very disheartening to hear. I already knew about what black cis women were going through. And so to hear his experience, in my head, I'm just like, well, what is preventing black trans men from going through the same thing that black cis men are going through? Cis women are going through. And so, I just wanted to do something. I wanted to kind of get ahead of the thing. And so I saw this program, Doula Trainings International, and they were offering a trans scholarship for doulas. And for me, like, that was the ticket. And like, this is how I can help. This is how I can advocate and educate. So, I'm very thankful for the scholarship that was given. They were based in Brooklyn. So, I just had to go to Brooklyn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the
that
training.
A drive
Yeah,
you?
It was a bus trip.
Oh,
Chinese bus.
You're crazy. I used to take that bus from here. They used to take the bus from here to New York for like $1.
So,
I don't think they do it anymore though.
No. But yeah, I just hopped on the bus, and it was a great experience. I was the only man, trans or cis in the class. I was lucky. I felt kind of lucky.
How did that feel? I was gonna ask, like, how did that feel?
Yes, I love women, especially black women. So just to be surrounded, by a bunch of beautiful black women, I had no complaints.
That's right.
No complaints.
No complaints at all.
But yeah, the class was very gender affirming. The language that they use, it wasn't solely centered around mothers. So I just felt like the educators and the trainers were very knowledgeable of trans experiences and made the training all inclusive.
I love it.
Very good.
That's
Very
excellent.
good. That's excellent. So, all right. Well, it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your education.
You're welcome.
And we'll be talking again in the future
Yes,
and other
we will.
topics too.
Yes,
I love the
we
fact
will.
that you're in the psychology space, because I think the study of human, study of mind is so important. And you also did sociology, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So psychology, sociology, like they intertwine.
They do.
So once you do that, it's so easy to be able to understand why people do the things they do.
Yes. But also
internally and also, and then how social background can affect someone's behavior and character. So you have a lot on your plate to share with us. So we'll be welcoming you again. Thank you so much for having us on the birth
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Peace, y'all.
So, speaking of, you just being a doula and just getting that training, do you feel like we need more transgen who in that space? And why?
Absolutely. Just because the advocacy is needed. There's education that's needed and there's advocacy that's needed. You'd be amazed what medical students are actually learning in medical school when it comes to trans people, our bodies, our experiences, and things like that. I've actually have trained medical students at Yale and Harvard on the very thing because they're not learning it in medical school. So I definitely think doulas are needed to provide services to LGBTQ plus people across the board, especially though trans men and Black trans men. I think that, doulas, we are advocates, we are people on the front line fighting for people in their most vulnerable moment. And, when we talk about Black advocates and Black doulas, I think it's important to advocate for us collectively. I don't think it is necessarily helpful to the movement, to the reproductive justice movement, to kind of be selective about, what Black people you want to support, what Black people you want to, stand in solidarity with, especially when we all have one oppressor in common. Our oppressors do not care if we're trans. They don't care if we're gay or straight. What they're focused on is our Blackness. So I think, realizing intersectionality, the similarities in our experiences, acknowledging the differences in our experiences is important. But, coming together and realizing that we're all being oppressed by the same people, by the same systems, and there's power in numbers. People power is a real thing. I don't think it's anything wrong with having a specialty as a doula. I think that's perfectly fine, but I do think being educated and being knowledgeable about the fact that, number one, we exist.
Yes, we can take that. Like,
We exist.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Like we exist, that you guys exist, right? Or we all exist, or whatever.
Right.
Like, just don't shut it down. Like you can't shut it down. Like you can try to, but it is what it is, right? So I think the bottom line. That's why at the beginning of the podcast we were talking about education, right? So the bottom line is know it.
Yep.
Understand it. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sorry, I digress.
No.
My apologies.
We exist.
I just love that you say that. Yeah.
And there are trans people having babies. There are trans people, wanting to raise families and create those families. And in 2025, it's happening. It's I know that we're in tense political times. But this community, we've always thrived and we've always pushed forward, and so that's what we're going to continue to do. So, like I said, I think it's important for all doulas to at least have the education.
And I want to hit on something you said about just the existence, right? What do you have to say to those parents who feel like, oh, I'm going to shield my child against, this aspect of reality. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm going to protect myself and my daughter or my son against this, LGBTQ books, or just seeing it, or you know what I'm saying? So it's like, what do you say to those parents who think like just keeping it a secret from their growing child in the world that they will be exposed to again later? It's just like alcohol, like you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not advocating anybody to mention alcohol, but it's there, right? You get to a point where your child will become an adult and they can drink. Like, do you want your child not to know or what alcohol is at all, and just be 21 and then find out about alcohol, and then maybe like when they delve into it, like they get into it in a way that's uncontrollable, because that's what will happen. But anyway, how do you think, like, what education or piece of information or advice do you have for those parents who think just shielding their kids or thinking they're protecting their kids against this information that is so real? What do you think you would do to them? Like, or what do you have message you have for them?
Well, I first want to say I don't blame any parent for wanting to shield a child from something that they believe is going to be harmful to that child. That is what you should be doing, right? The problem is that, is this knowledge truly harmful? You know, is learning about LGBTQ people harming the child, right? I don't think, quote unquote, shielding your child from queer content or queer history is going to keep them from being queer themselves. I didn't grow up reading queer books. I didn't grow up, watching, I didn't grow up watching RuPaul's Drag Race. I didn't, my family is Jamaican. So if anybody knows anybody about, Jamaican culture, queerness was definitely, very far removed from my upbringing. But there will always come a time where your child becomes an individual, and yes, they can learn from you, and, you can kind of, try to shape their morals and values and things like that. But at the end of the day, like, me being an individual, my own person, that's the thing that I grew into. So it doesn't matter like what books or what cartoons or what movies I read or watched, I was always going to become who I was going to become. So I think that's important to remember. And, you can only shield it so much. Kids go to school, they have friends, they're in sports and things like that. So they're not just being exposed to whatever, you teach at home.
Gotcha.
So I think it's important to educate them in a responsible way. And I also think it prevents bullying. You know what I mean? When you are taught very early on that differences are okay, that we can celebrate differences, we don't have to fear them or criminalize or demonize them, then you kind of get in front of that, and you can prevent bullying. So when, a child does come into contact with somebody who's different, whether it's a child who's queer or one who has disabilities or one who speaks a different language, they have that accepting behavior already ingrained in them.
All right, very good. Speaking of education, I think you also touched on something that I want to delve into. You said that you educate Harvard and Howard medical students. Like, can I just repeat that?
Yes.
I mean, if I pay a Harvard tuition, like, I'm expecting, like, you know what I'm saying, to know it all. Like, maybe that's an ignorant statement to make. I stand corrected. But if you know, it's a prestigious school. But anyway, I digress. So about that, how come, why do you think, is it that they held that piece of information away from them? Like, as it is not, I mean, because as a medical student, a doctor, like, you're not supposed to be trained in just, you're trained in the human, you know what I'm saying, anatomy or biology, right? So I think it's my first time hearing it, and I'm baffled. Like, why? That's a really serious piece of information. Like, it's 2025. Like,
Yes.
this is not. A doctor should not be ignorant about this fact. And we're gonna get into it again when we talk about more into this when we talk about the birthing space and what they know when they're confronted with transgender men or women that are getting ready to have babies and stuff like that. So, but just provide more context to my question.
Yeah. I feel like the training came from a lot of trans people entering medical spaces, whether it's clinics or hospitals and things like that, and just having these awful experiences, and making reports, complaining, kind of bringing down ratings for hospitals and things like that. Nobody wants that. You're messing with our money.
When you hit their pocket, that's when you get them to right in your pocket. That's when you get them to listen to you. All
right. So there are colleges and universities who try to take a preventative approach.
That's right.
And I think the most important thing is that they want to hear from trans people themselves.
Correct.
So they bring us into the room to educate and to train and to talk about the experiences and things like that. As opposed to somebody who is cisgender, not a part of the community, kind of just reading from a book, not really connecting with the information that they're teaching. So oftentimes, it's kind of better when we are brought into the classrooms.
Makes sense. Makes it very practical.
Yeah.
And do you feel like sometimes some of our textbooks or the textbooks that this medical student reads is deduced, where it's like they take out certain information intentionally, just not giving them the full spectrum of what they need to know, because they're trying to protect certain information, and protecting that certain information, like I feel like it's political, right? A lot of things that we find out recently is very political. We're not going to delve into that. That's not what we're here for today. But yeah, so I really do appreciate you just standing up in different aspects, right? You do the rally, do the education, and all of that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your experience being a brother doula. Like, I know when I spoke to you, you said you've had like 20 births.
Yes.
How is that? Just tell us, like, how do you get your clients, and do they reach out to you? Like, what's so special about coming to you?
So yes, when I first got my certification, I just ran with it, and I was meeting a need. So I feel like that's why I had so many births at first. So many people reached out to me, because trans and queer couples were looking for that type of support. And I just did a really good job promoting myself. They found me.
He's great, y'all. Just saying. You told y'all the numbers. I know earlier you said there's power in the numbers, right?
Yes. Yes. But yeah, like I am a fearless advocate.
Okay.
So I don't stray from threats, or I don't get intimidated easily. So I just think it was just the perfect role for me to be in. A lot of times in the hospitals, I did have to buck up a little bit, with the nurses and the doctors, because they weren't being affirming. They weren't being as gentle as they should have. They weren't being as attentive as they should have. They weren't allowing people to put their preferences out there in terms of what they wanted their birth experience to be like. So I had to be that loud, sometimes harsh voice, but all for the greater good, all for the health and wellness of the birthing parent and the baby. So it's been amazing working with so many people, the families I've worked with, I would say as of late, I've taken more of an educational approach to my doula.
Which is good.
Yeah, and that's, that's
that.
the beauty of doula work. Like, you can do so many things. You can make products, you can, educate, or you can support people, in their birthing journeys. So I've loved it so far.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what does a typical birth plan looks like for a transgen male?
Yeah, so I mean, it is definitely individual. So it depends, what a person wants and envisions, but you can decide how many people you want in the room, who you want in the room, how do you want your anatomy, to be referred, do you want, things inserted into you? Do you, like...
Gotcha. Okay. So these are the things that sometimes you also like educate people who maybe are going through that journey for the very first time.
Yes, absolutely.
Like give them the expectation and all
and then,
that.
also like what do you want to be called? Do you want to be called the father? Are you the parent? Do you have another name you want to be, known as? So, just respecting, a person's preferences. And the point of all of that is when you have a stress-free birth,
yes,
then you can thrive, your baby can thrive, and that is the point of it all.
Okay.
So,
all right. Very good. Very good. So I had another question, and my question is around, I don't know how we're going to answer this, but so I found out that in Sweden, when a transgen gives birth, trans male or something, right, on the birth certificate, they can identify as, I think, mom or dad, whichever.
Okay.
But like in the UK, and I believe in the United States, I didn't see it, but I didn't get the information. But I know UK, you have a mom is a mom, a dad is a dad, but Sweden, like, they allow you that freedom to. Is that something, like, have you had clients who were concerned about that? Because I asked this question because of how I've also been exposed to how important it is to use the right pronouns when talking. Like, it's a thing. Like, really, it's like, for example, and I say it's a thing because for me initially, I didn't think it was a thing. I didn't think it was a big deal. But the way I've come to understand it is, it's like, for example, I have a friend whose name is Sarah. It's spelled S-A-R-A.
Okay.
However, if you make the mistake of spelling her name S-A-R-A and put a H in it, she will be sure to correct you, right?
Yeah.
And then I also had a manager whose name is, what's her name again? Allison.
Okay.
And she goes by Ali, to the extent even on the corporate directory she changed it to Ali. But there are certain documents where she can change it. So if you make a mistake and call her Allison, it's a problem. So I had to get myself to confirm my mindset to understand that this is kind of where they're coming from. When they say, I want you to address me as the gender that I identify with.
Absolutely.
So that's why I asked that question. So if you can just elaborate on that a little bit, like, how important it is.
So in terms of how a parent identifies on a birth certificate, that is depending on your state and your laws.
Okay.
I've seen some states, they can identify as a gender and role that aligns with their transition.
Okay.
Other times it's the opposite. So you might have a trans man and the trans man might be listed as mother.
Okay.
On the birth certificate, which is, at the time you have this bundle of joy, so you're not really, but focus on that. But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
You're good.
Do you, from the top of your head, know what states allow that or not?
Yeah, no.
Okay, because this podcast, not a podcast, but this guy I watched on YouTube, he was said he literally made plans to go have his baby in Sweden.
Yeah.
Simply
Yeah.
only for that particular reason. So I'm
Yeah.
asking that here if we have states that, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know this. I do know,
permeates
like,
that.
yeah.
I don't know. Again, y'all, I'm being educated here, and I hope you're getting some education too.
No, there are definitely other places around the world who have better healthcare when it comes to trans people. Even Canada. Thailand is another place. It's
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's quite a few places, but
All right. So let's talk insurance, right?
okay.
I don't know if you can say this. I'm sorry, it's so much. I hope we're not going over time, y'all. I'm into this. I hope you guys are.
Yes.
Let's talk about insurance.
Yes.
Like, how does insurance work when you're a trans man, you know, or trans woman, and you need that support in the birthing space? Like, educators. Thank you.
It's really the same thing. Like, it's so interesting because trans people, our lives are so much dictated by the law. And I think that's why, you know, we kind of go so hard when policies are created that take away our rights and things like that. But it's really, you know, according to where you live at, according to the state. Like in Philly, a lot of the things are covered that, you know, services we get are covered by insurance. They're covered by Medicaid. Some states, they're not. So it really depends where you live at. A lot of places in the South, unfortunately, have a lot of less protections and insurance resources than people, you know, maybe say on the East Coast. So yeah, it kind of depends on where you live. That makes the difference.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck to anyone that is looking for medical assistance or anything like that. Do you have any recommendation for any maybe organization that supports, you know, the trans in the birthing space, or that any resource out there for anyone who is probably struggling, looking for any type of education help, anything?
I would say, like, in terms of like health services, medical services, I've been going to Planned Parenthood for over 10 years. And for me, that's always been an affirming space where I can get my hormones, I can get, you know, STI, STD testing, any type of sexual service that I may need. Like if I need an abortion, I can go to Planned Parenthood, and they're knowledgeable enough about trans people and LGBTQ folks that, you know, you don't have to deal with any weird questions or any type of awkward, uncomfortable situation. And they're all across the country. So I think that, you know, Planned Parenthood is, you know, always just a good start, you know, until you can find your PCP. You know, some states have LGBTQ or queer clinics and hospitals and things like that. But, you know, until you can find that, I think that's always a good start. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Let's talk postpartum.
Yes.
What areas do you think, like, people, heterosexual people, like, you know, go through after giving birth, especially for trans men? Like, you know,
I think.
is there any, also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
There you go.
And also, is there any resource that Black Mothers in Power provide as far as education, support for postpartum care and things like that?
Yeah. So I think that postpartum care support for trans men can look very interesting and different, depending on, first of all, depending on where, if that guy has a job and where he works, you know, is he getting some type of leave? Sometimes he is, sometimes he's not, because he's not being seen. Well, you know, some guys aren't even out on their jobs, you know. I know a lot of guys who have gotten pregnant and they've just worn larger clothing to hide it. You know, so the job didn't know that they were pregnant. So they couldn't take, you know, maternity or paternity leave, and things like that. So I think, you know, it's very individual depending on the person. I think postpartum depression is a thing that hasn't actually been explored as much when it comes to trans men. But you know, and that's when I be talking about the intersectionality. You know, how we can say, oh yeah, we go do this too, or we go do this as well. So let's come together and talk about our experiences and kind of share resources and build, you know, community in this way. Yeah.
Sorry. So you really think there are jobs who would deny someone of maternity care, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If your city does not have protections for LGBTQ people in the city ordinance when it comes to employment and public services, you'll definitely be discriminated against.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, you know, whether you're in the LGBTQ arena, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, though. Like, can we just be kind? Can we just be nice? Can we just understand that we are all humans and we're not perfect? Like, your sin, if you want to look at it as a sin, right? Because a lot of people, that's what they digress to immediately. Your sin, like, is a sin. My sin is a sin. Like, no one has the right, I don't believe, at least, to point finger at anybody. Because when you're pointing finger at somebody, you have this finger pointing right back at you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So what makes us so perfect to be so hateful that we pick certain things because you are this person? We're going to, you know, exclude you, seclude you, marginalize. You know what I'm saying? For me, that's what I see. I just want love. If we say we really love, and especially like those people, especially people who sometimes, you know, base it on Christianity, and I'm a Christian, trust me. And I'm not saying that, you know, the Bible says X, Y, Z. When I have conversations like this with people who are Christians or anything like that, the first thing they will say, the Bible condemns this. Well, sis or brother, there's a lot of other things the Bible condemns too, right?
Yeah, so many things. Yeah.
And I'm saying this because this is me. This is what this is how I see things. This is how I see life. Let's not be so quick to judge. At the end of the day, when we all die, we're going to go speak for ourselves. We're not speaking for nobody. At least that's what I believe. My dad was a pastor, y'all.
Yeah.
So I came from a Christian home.
PK.
I know the Bible. So let me tell you a little bit about me. My dad was a pastor. He was a high school principal.
Wow.
And he was a custom officer. Talk about a disciplinarian. Yeah. So I grew up in a home where you were not allowed to wear pants because pants were considered sinful. It's a man's clothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So like I grew up in a very strict environment where also like my education, my dad was so strict with my education where I wanted to study. This is why some of the reasons why I feel sorry for a lot of like trans people when people like pick on them and stuff like that. I wanted to study accounting. Right? And I was really good with accounting. And well, my dad was like, oh, heck no.
Right.
Mayaki's daughter?
Yeah, you need some more
wants
money.
to study accounting when you can be a doctor, you can be this. And by the way, I'm Nigerian.
Yeah.
So you know Nigerian parents. Yeah, being a doctor is everything to them. Like, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or something, you ain't studying nothing good. So it was like, you know, so when I had to, when he pretty much, he literally, and he succeeded at the beginning, in forcing me to study science courses because he believes that studying accounting was not the right thing, right? Yeah. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was stressed. But I went along because he gave me an ultimatum that if I didn't study take science courses, he wasn't going to pay my school fees. So it was either do that or not.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I studied from my 9th grade to 12th grade. I studied science courses. I did pass mistakenly.
Yeah.
I think I've got more N's than giving me the paper. But after studying that, I went on to college and I started continues doing what he wanted because he literally, because I left Nigeria, I came to America.
Yeah.
I went to school in North Carolina. He literally used to call me, "Hey, are you still studying science?" I'm like, "Yes, Dad," but needless to say, because that was not what I wanted to do. I was rebellious. At that point, I didn't care. I was just having fun in college, making all F's. Didn't care. Because he wasn't there to check me. He was in Nigeria and I was in America. But it got to a point when it was like a dead end for me, where I was like, I gotta make a decision for me, right?
Yeah.
So I went back. I decided to change schools and went to another college. I graduated from a HBCU, Winston-Salem State University. Go Rams!
Yes.
I graduated from there. Graduated with honors. With a degree I wanted, and my dream growing up has always been to work at a bank.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, right after I graduated, I
Yeah.
started working for a bank, and I've been with the bank for almost going to 20 years now.
That's awesome.
So I'm just talking about the power of being convinced as one to do something, and someone else tried to come and instill their belief on you.
Yep.
Right? Let's be
absolutely.
mindful.
Yes.
That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Put yourself in their shoe. Like if you see your daughter struggling with, either their sexuality or anything in life, like at some point, is their decision detrimental?
Yeah.
How really
Absolutely.
is it?
That's
Are they
like,
killing
how
somebody? Are they
harmful?
hurting somebody?
Yes.
If that's not what it is, then you know what I'm saying? I digress. So let's go back. So just to sum it up, I just want to remind our viewers that Black women in America are 3 to 4 times more likely to die of birth-related complication, right? And when we say 3 to 4 times more likely to die of birth yeah, you get it. When we put that 3 to 4 times compared to our white counterparts, we're talking about a 700 to 800 in numbers of people. You know what I'm saying? That's alarming. That's somebody's mom. That's somebody's neighbor. That's somebody's coworker. That's somebody's friend. That's somebody's everything that is dying, right? So very important that we just focus on what's important. Reclaim our rights as human beings. We have the right to live, right to give birth, and just look for a positive way forward to help one another instead of the hate, the anger, the agony, just marginalizing ourselves, picking on ourselves like we're better because we're this, we're not better because we're this, you're not better than me because you were this, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
So let's all be mindful. Let's show love. Mindful, once again, I repeat, of what we say to each other, of how we conclude on people. Let's be open-minded to educate ourselves. And if you see somebody who you don't think is educated and needs the education, help them out. Just like he goes to Howard and Harvard to, I keep repeating. Yeah, I told y'all my guest today on this thing. I had a doctor, now I had somebody,
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, so just like he goes there and have a real life conversation, because he's a lived experience, right? Have this real life conversations with, educators, also people who are considered, knowledgeable already, and also that goes back to, you're never too old to learn.
No, never.
Right?
Yep.
And you never know it all.
Yes.
Just like I was talking to a doctor the other day, and by the way, May 25th is called Africa Day, right? And I'm gonna go into details about what Africa Day is. You can just go to ChatGPT or Google, type Africa Day. You get more information about it. But pretty much it's the liberation of Africans against colonialism from back in the day or whatever. But it's called African OAU. Or AU, I don't remember the name exactly, but Africa Day pretty much is set aside to celebrate Africans coming together against colonialism and trying to do things as one with a strong voice, strong power to move forward and things like that. So I was talking to someone who is a doctor and an African, right? And I'm telling him I'm hosting an event, for Africa Day, and I'm inviting him to come, and he was pretty much downplaying the event.
No.
Not only that, like telling me he didn't know what it was. I expect him as a doctor, someone who's knowledgeable with that, ask me questions. Let me educate you a little bit.
You gotta take his African card.
No, we're not sorry for him. He's my brother. He's my brother. What a fan. So, but anyway, that just goes back to education, right? That you don't know it all. Even though he's a doctor, he don't know it all. He still needs to be educated, right? He's my brother here. He's not a doctor, right?
Right.
No. But you're educating doctors because, beyond just reading a textbook.
Yep.
So just have an open mind.
Yes. Happy
and
Pride.
Love. Yeah. So I do appreciate everyone for listening. Thank you. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Once again, I'd like to appreciate everyone for listening today. It's been a pleasure having you here, Christian, on my show.
Thank you.
The Birthseed, Our Heritage, Our Legacy podcast dedicated to addressing the pressing issues of Black maternal health, exploring the stories, the challenges, and the triumphs of Black mothers in Delaware and beyond. And like I said earlier on this podcast, typically we dive into our heritage, the systemic barriers we face, and the legacy we aim to leave behind. And I hope that through our conversation today, you are able to learn a thing or two that you can share with your friends, family, and loved ones. Thank you. Stay tuned for our next episode. We love you. Bye.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.